Hey, awesome people. Mr. C here with you with another fractions video. Make sure, if you learn anything new at all, click that like and subscribe button. Join us as we continue making math understandable and challenging. This video, we are going to be adding mixed numbers with like denominators using the standard strategy, okay? And we'll jump into that here in a minute. I also want to point out a couple things to you. In the description below, you will find our 4th grade fractions playlist. We have talked all things mixed numbers. We've talked improper fractions. We've talked a lot of different things. So check out all of the 4th grade fractions videos. They are in the playlist in the description below. Also, there's the 3rd grade and the 2nd grade fractions videos. All of those are linked in playlists in the description. Check those out. Get caught up to where we are today. Again, this video, we are going to be adding mixed numbers with like denominators using the standard strategy. All right, this will be our teaching video. Let's jump into a couple of examples. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we get started on this very first problem, make sure you have a growth mindset before we get started. If you're new with us here at Math with Mr. C, having a growth mindset means that you may not know how to do something yet, and yet is the key word. Just means that you haven't had a chance to learn it. You haven't had a chance to practice it a lot. A growth mindset means that we don't give up. It means that if we face a challenge, we look for our mistakes and we use our mistakes to help us get better. All right. So today we're going to be using what I call really the standard strategy. And the reason I call it that is because if you asked any adult, if you asked anybody older than you, they're probably going to show you this strategy for how to add a mixed number. Okay. We've already spent time working with models and drawing models to be able to see what this means when we're adding a mixed number. Today we're just going to a new strategy, and this strategy here is going to be really using the models in our head. We're not going to be drawing them. We're going to be kind of picturing this in our head, and we're just going to be adding all of these numbers that we see here on the screen. Okay, so this very first problem we have here is 3 1/4 plus 1 2/4. And what we're going to do here, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to just kind of picture this in your mind, okay? Kind of close your eyes for a second if you need to, and think back to what we were doing when we were drawing models. When we were drawing models, we would take this 3 1/4 and we would represent that. We would draw 3 holes. We would draw another model that had 1/4 shaded in. And then on the other side, we would take 1 2/4 and we draw one whole model, and then we draw another model and color in part of it, okay? So that's what we were doing when we were drawing the models. Today, what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna show you how we would add them just using the standard, very standard strategy, okay? The first thing I want you to do, all right, first thing I want you to do is I want you to take a look at your fractions in your mixed number. Okay, so if we take a look at our fractions here, I'm going to circle them. If we take a look at our fractions, we have the fraction 1/4 and we've got the fraction 2/4. Something, if you remember back to when we were just adding fractions, we talked about if our denominators aren't the same, if they are not the same, that means that we have to make them the same. Okay, and if we look at these two fractions here, both denominators are 4. So because they're the same, that means that we don't have an extra step. That means that we're going to be able to just jump into this problem and start solving it. If they weren't the same, we would have one extra step. And we're going to talk about that later on. But I always want to point that out to keep an eye on your fractions, on the denominators. Okay, so this is what I want you to do. I want us to take our whole numbers. Okay, take our whole numbers. We've got a whole number of 3 and a whole number of 1. Okay, and I want you to add these. Okay, and before we add them, I want to kind of point something out to you. Okay, when we have 3 1/4, what that technically means is that we have 3 plus 1/4. Okay, that's what 3 1/4 means. And the same thing over here for 1 2/4. What this means is we have 1 plus 2/4. Okay, that's what it's talking about. We're technically adding a whole number and we're adding a fraction together when we get a mixed number. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind with what I'm about to show you. So what I want you to do is I want you to take your whole numbers. Okay, take your whole numbers, 3 and 1, and let me show you. I'm going to do it like this: 3 plus 1 plus 1/4 plus 2/4. Okay, and I kind of rearranged this, and this can be a little bit confusing, but I'm just doing this because I want to kind of show you a little bit more clearly what we were doing with our models when we were coloring them in and adding. What I've done is I've taken the whole numbers, 3, and the whole numbers 1, and I've just put them next to each other because we know that when we add, it doesn't matter which order we add things in, right? If you remember, when we add numbers, it doesn't matter if we add 1 plus 3 or 3 plus 1. We're going to get the same answer, right? So all I've done is rearranged it so we can kind of see it a little better, okay? So here's my question for you. What is 3 plus 1? Well, 3 plus 1 is 4, okay? So we've got 4, and now we've got our fractions. So take a look at this for a second. 3 plus 1 gave us 4. Now we've got our fractions. So now let's add our fractions. So let's add 1/4 plus 2/4. Okay, and I'm going to have to write this over here on the side because I took up too much room. So 1/4 plus 2/4 is going to be 3, because 1 plus 2 is 3. Do we add the denominators? No. Remember, we do not add our denominators. So it stays the same. So now we've got 4 plus 3/4. 4 plus 3/4, and we know that that addition symbol is just really to kind of help us to remember that we're adding these two things together, a whole number and a fraction, but technically this is the correct way we would write it. So if we were to add 3 and 1/4 plus 1 and 2/4, this here would be your final answer, okay? And again, I wanted to kind of rewrite this in a different way so you kind of see what we're doing. But all we really did, and you know, Mr. C did a lot of writing here, but all we did was we took our whole numbers, 3 and 1, we did 3 plus 1 and got 4. Then we took our two fractions, 1/4 plus 2/4, and we got 3/4. Okay, all this stuff here is just some extra stuff that I put on here. Okay, and again, don't let that confuse you. Slow yourself down here. Ask yourself a couple questions. You know, where did you make a mistake at? What doesn't make sense? Stick with it. Okay, stick with it. I'm going to show you another example problem. We're going to walk through it again. All right, stick with me. Let's try another one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, stick with me here. Okay, let me show you another one. So this time we've got 1 2/5 plus 4 1/5. And again, I'm going to kind of rearrange all of these numbers here because I want to make sure you can see what we're doing. Okay, I'm going to rearrange all of our numbers, our mixed number, our whole numbers and our fractions, because I want you to make sure you can see what I'm talking about here. Okay, so technically what we have here is we have 1 plus 4. Okay, that's the whole numbers, plus 2/5 plus 1/5. Okay, that is technically what we have on the screen. Only thing we don't see is we don't have small addition symbols in between these mixed numbers because that's just ridiculous. You don't need them, okay? But this is actually what we're doing. What we're actually doing is we're taking whole numbers and we're taking fractions, and they're not just magically stuck together. And I think that's something that we do a bad job of explaining to students a lot of times, is that this mixed number here isn't just magic. It doesn't just randomly show up. Like, you don't just take a whole number and a fraction, stick them together and say, voila, there's a mixed number. What it actually is it's a whole number and you're adding a fraction to it. Okay, you're taking a whole, one whole, and you're adding a fraction, a part, a piece of a whole. Okay, and so that's what I'm hoping you can see here. We're taking the whole numbers, 1 and 4, and we're taking the fractions, 2/5 and 1/5, and I'm just putting them together. I'm just grouping them together. Okay, that's what I really want to point out to you. Okay, if that's confusing to you, I totally get it. all right? Make sure, a way to kind of help you if that's a little bit confusing, draw the models that we've done in our last video, okay? Draw the models that we worked on last time. That can really help you understand what I'm saying there, okay? That'll be really helpful to really see it, okay? Well, with that being said, before we actually solve this problem, see if you can picture in your brain what 1 2/5 and 4 1/5 looks like, okay? Picture what this looks like and what this looks like. That's really important. We talk about it all the time here at Math with Mr. C. I don't want you to just know how to add these numbers together. What I really want you to know how to do is I really want you to understand, to be able to see the math that you're solving. Okay, it's great and all that you may be able to solve this in like 30 seconds, and that's awesome. I mean, honestly, it's great. But if you can't really understand, and what I mean by that is if you can't see what 1 2/5 is and what 4 1/5 is, if you can't see that and understand what that model looks like, then it's not doing you a whole lot of good. Okay, you're just throwing numbers out. You're just adding numbers. You're just putting two numbers together and saying, voila, there's my answer. And that's not always great in math, because if you can really understand what you're adding, then you're going to be able to better understand it, one, but you're also going to be able to help explain it to other people. And that's a really awesome thing to do, is be able to teach other people things that you have learned, okay? So let's try to solve this one here. We've got 1 2/5 plus 4 1/5. Let me see what's going on here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the whole numbers. Okay, 1 plus 4 is 5. Okay, now let's add, now let's add the fractions. And I want to point out to you, because I didn't earlier, because I got distracted. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. Y'all get that. Take a look at those fractions for me. What do you notice about them? What do you notice? Do you notice that the denominators are the same? That's really important, because if they aren't the same, that means that we have extra work to do. Okay, that means we have an extra step. In this problem here, though, the denominators are the same, which means that we can go ahead and add them. Okay, so let's do that. What is 2 plus 1? Well, 2 plus 1 is 3. Do we add the denominators? No. Never add your denominators. All right, never add your denominators. The denominator stays the same, and there's our answer. All right, our answer is 5 3/5. 5 3/5. And again, this here, it's a lot quicker than drawing the models. But make sure you understand what 5 3/5 looks like. Okay, because if you don't understand that, I highly suggest you work on drawing the models, understand that, and then work on this strategy here. Okay, this strategy here doesn't take a whole lot of time, but make sure you are slowing yourself down. You're not just adding numbers together. You're really understanding the work that you are doing. Okay, so with all that being said, in the description below, you will find our practice problems video. If you're ready for some more problems, check that out. Get ready for a challenge though, okay? Remember, if you learned anything new at all, click that like and subscribe button. Join us as we continue making math understandable and challenging. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have for you today. Mr. C, out.